Let me also ask you, you know I have to ask you about this. I know you will get cross when I ask you about this, but what your ongoing battles with Rupert Lowe, certainly very personal between you and Rupert Lowe, was until very recently one of your party's 5 MPs. You've made a complaint to the police, complaining that he made violent threats to you. That is something that's being investigated, something that has been denied by Rupert Lowe. But there has been a report issued this week by an independent KC who was asked by the party to carry out an investigation into whether or not there had been basically harassment of two members of staff in Rupert Lowe's office. And the KC who's written that report has said there is veracity, credible evidence in those complaints, something that he has categorically denied. Also that one of those complaints made by a female member of staff was specifically against Rupert Lowe, and that complaint went in before we are told, you know, that Nigel Farage had his feathers ruffled by that interview in the Daily Mail when Rupert Lowe talked about him being a messianic figure. And now we learned in the last 24 hours that Jacqueline Perry KC, the KC required, was not told in advance that report was going to be published yesterday, and that Reform UK jumped the gun. Why did you publish the report ahead of when the KC had agreed it would be published?
So, Julia, the report that
or is
came
she
out,
lying?
we've published the report in the interests of full transparency. People can go and read it, and the conclusions are as you just described. The party's acted entirely properly throughout this process. It's obviously not been pleasant at all. It's not something that Lee Anderson nor I enjoyed at all. It's been an unpleasant episode. As far as we're concerned now, this is the KC investigation has been completed, and people can go and read the report for themselves.
But why did you release the report ahead of when the KC expected the report to be released?
We didn't. We did not do that.
So she's lying.
Hold on.
She was. She wrote an email email to Rupert Lowe's legal team. It is claimed that she, again, unless Rupert Lowe is lying. I mean, again, who knows? But Jacqueline Perry Casey said she was surprised and disconcerted to discover that her findings had been released sooner than expected on Tuesday. Unless that is simply not true, and she didn't say that. She thought it was released before it was supposed to be released. Why would you do that?
What I will say is this: the report has been published. It is clear for everybody to see.
So you're not denying that, then?
I am absolutely denying.
So she knew it was going to be released then.
That we've acted in any way improperly in terms of when we published the report. But
no, but she says that the claim is that she had given Rupert Lowe and his legal team until Wednesday to respond, and then the report was published on the Tuesday, so he didn't have time to respond.
Julia, number one, Mr. Lowe himself declared on social media last week that he would not be cooperating with the investigation.
Why not wait the extra day?
Secondly, and this is the last comment I'll make on this because the report is there for everybody to read. The second point is that he had a solicitor engaging with the independent KC, and that solicitor also confirmed that Mr. Lowe would not be responding prior to that deadline. So I absolutely deny that the party's acted in any way improperly or jumped the gun. We've acted entirely properly throughout this process.
OK. Are you glad to be rid of him?
Look, it's been a really unpleasant experience, Julie. It's not something that anyone in any political party, I think, wants to go through. But we're now focused on the future. We've got over 1,600 brilliant candidates who are going to be standing for council for reform ahead of the May the 1st elections. And we've got Sarah Pochin, who has been a magistrate for 2 decades, who will be running to become the next member of Parliament for Runcorn and Hull.
Other candidates obviously will be. Other candidates for other parties will, of course, be standing not just for local elections, but also, of course, in that by-election when it's called. I just want to go back. Given that there was a personal issue between you and Rupert Lowe, we've had claims and counterclaims. None of us were there. We don't know what was said, what was done. He's denied the allegations that we understand. The police are investigating the claims that you have made. You know what's been going on online. You know that there's been a lot of support from the online right for Rupert Lowe. You've been very clear, Richard Tice, Nigel Farage and others have been very clear that you feel that the right thing has been done in removing the reform whip from, basically 1/5 of your MPs. You've had an awful lot of abuse from an awful lot of people on the online right. A lot of people accusing Nigel Farage of selling out, going moderate, going mainstream, and that part of that is appointing you. People are particularly singling out the fact that you are a Muslim by faith, and of course from an ethnic minority. pointing out your race and your religion as being an issue. What did you make of those? I can't believe you haven't seen those huge numbers of messages concerning those factors about you.
Yeah, look, if you go into politics on the front line, Julia, you know what you're getting yourself into. It is a rough old game, and you've got to have a thick skin. We're more determined than ever to ensure that Reform wins the next general election. We've made huge progress since the general government, 14% in the polls, 26% in the average. We've added 160,000 new members, and that's continuing to rise. You can see that on our ticker online in the last 8 months. So that's what we're focused on. And listen, of course, you see all sorts of things, crazy things going on Twitter. We're not letting any of that stuff distract us.
OK, thank you for joining us. Zia Yusuf, Chairman of Reform UK. Philip Ingram, listening to all of that, whichever you'd like to come back in on.
Oh, there's so much in it. There's so much in all of that. You know, I think what I'd like to see out of Reform is a solidification of a lot of their policies, and them turning themselves from a party of protest into
sound like Rupert Lowe.
into something that is more mainstream. But the whole
we need to have some detail.
Exactly, the whole issue with Rupert Lowe has hurt Reform badly in the eyes of a lot of people that are out there. And
do you think so? Because I think the argument seems to be actually from Nigel Farage and others that actually a lot of his views are kind of beyond the pale to average voters, and actually you're not going to win an election by appeasing the online right on X.
I think what it's done is, and this ties in with previous comments that we've had, it's brought in the polarisation that there is. Instead of there being informed debate, it's polarisation. So the Rupert Lowe supporters are hard Rupert Lowe supporters. The Nigel Farage supporters are hard Nigel Farage supporters. And neither of the twain shall meet. The reality is, it's somewhere in the grey zone.
I find the number of messages that are supportive of Rupert Lowe, which are abusive, blatantly racist abuse of Zia Yusuf, I find very. I'm not in any way accusing Rupert Lowe of those views.
But it's shocking.
But it has been very shocking.
And it's a sad reflection of social media society today.
Well, exactly.